Another guy who I consider a friend and a guy that is top-notch in the business. And I got to be honest, every time DiMarzio puts out all sorts of great information out there on the transfer market or whatever the information, if you want to follow it in English, you can do so. And one of his top reporters, David Amoyal, joins us right now live from Massachusetts. David, welcome, my friend.
Great to be on. I wish we were talking under better circumstances, but it's always great to talk to you, amico.
David, look, let's be honest. Let's put all the cards on the table. You tweeted it out so right in that end of the game that they did not play two good games, one against Costa Rica and one today. And look, we can discuss all we want about the red card, David, but let's discuss the game itself, and then we'll get to all the antics. As I said to the two gentlemen before, to me, it's a mystery why Verratti didn't play against Costa Rica, where to me, maybe a point there would have been so valuable, and who knows how that game would have turned out. Your thoughts on how that would have changed?
Yes, I think when we look back in a couple of months, that will be one of the things we'll all look to. I thought today's match, there were a lot of circumstances, but to me, where Italy lost it was Costa Rica. It was a little bit puzzling in general, the lineup we saw in that match. I thought against England, we saw how England controlled Pirlo very well, but with Verratti playing next to him, there was still creativity from the Azzurri. Against Costa Rica, we saw them controlling Pirlo even better, and there was just nobody to help them create around them. So when we look back, that's really, I think that's where it was lost. A lot happened today, but I think that match against Costa Rica really set the Azzurri back a lot.
David, all the abuse, all the criticism that Balotelli received, some warranted, some not warranted, he still put the ball in the net in this World Cup. He could have put a couple more. But without Balotelli, I looked at all the subs that came in against Costa Rica, and even again today, did absolutely nothing. I was a huge supporter of Antonio Cassano. He looked lost in many occasions. Cerci didn't get the time he was deserved. Amoyal did absolutely nothing, and Insegna was lost. How much of the conversation is going to circle around Prandelli leaving Destro at home, Rossi at home, even Luca Toni?
Yes, I certainly agree. Hindsight is always 20/20 when it comes to this. And just like you, I really thought this was going to be a great World Cup for Cassano. He had never played in a World Cup before. He was coming off a strong season at Parma. I thought he had shown some maturity, which we hadn't seen in years past. I also think, considering that Cassano isn't someone that really runs much during matches anyway, the heat and humidity in Brazil wouldn't impact him. But I was very disappointed. But against Costa Rica, he did absolutely nothing. Today, I thought it was somewhat of a good sub to bring him in when Italy still had a result that got him through the round, since he's good at ball possession. But he was just a non-factor in the World Cup in both chances he was given. Insigne and Cerci, too, they didn't get too many opportunities. They didn't really shine against Costa Rica. I think, Balotelli was too isolated. Candreva played really well against England, but against Costa Rica did absolutely nothing. I give credit to Prandelli today trying to put a second striker. Having two pure strikers is not something he's really done as an Azzurri coach, and on a big match like this, I give him credit for trying. But Immobile, was pretty disappointing today. I think, for Rossi, I do see how health was a factor. Rossi hadn't played a full match in all of 2014 since his injury. On paper, the options Prandelli had were pretty good. I look back in 2010 when Rossi wasn't picked on the team. The other strikers were Pazzini, Iaquinta, Quagliarella, players of that level. I thought this team was better on paper, but they just didn't live up to the reputation. So, tough loss for the Azzurri. I think it's very easy now to look back. I was pretty happy with the squad that was put together, but it's hard to say that I was right at that point. It just didn't work out at all.
To me, David, we could all play armchair quarterback now that it's all said and done, but let's be honest. This fascination with Thiago Motta has to stop if Italy want to progress in the next Euro Championships or even the next World Cup. He's absolutely done nothing in the last Euro and this World Cup, and even when he entered in the game today, I shook my head. I couldn't believe it, in disbelief. And then to me, I said this going way back when the announcement was made of the squad. Why no Giaccherini? Here's a guy at the Confederations Cup that had energy and passion that more than half of these players didn't have on this squad, and could have did a lot, and he didn't bring them.
Yeah, I'm surprised too, because especially because Prandelli has always favored Giaccherini. He was one, he took a lot of criticism when Giaccherini was a bench player at Juve, yet he was often starting for the Azzurri. And like you mentioned, he did bring some pace and some speed that we didn't see today. It seemed like Prandelli in general favored the players that played in Serie A. I think the only exceptions were the players from PSG. Thiago Motta, which you mentioned, Verratti and Sirigu. If not, he really stuck with the block of the players in Serie A. Giaccherini, would have helped with his pace, his versatility. I always felt the best lineup for the Azzurri was the 3-5-2 that we saw today, but they just didn't have enough dynamic wingers, and Giaccherini could have been one of the players we saw on the wings. He played that role very well in the Euro, and as you mentioned, in the Confederation Cup. I will say, Thiago Motta had a really good season at PSG, but he just has never translated that on the Azzurri. I think the fact that he started against Costa Rica was a big mistake. Today, he's usually pretty good in ball possession. I can somewhat see the logic of bringing him in. But it just didn't work out for him. I think this is the last we'll see of him on the Azzurri. I think you're going to see a little bit more fresh and young legs on the team in the future.
David, what have we learned exiting this World Cup aside from the two devastating losses? Have we learned that Marco Verratti is ready to take over from Pirlo? Have we learned that Sirigu actually can, look quite competent in a replacement of Buffon in that first game against England like we saw? Or have we learned that there is a desperate need for pure international strikers that we lack today?
Well, I think that, Pirlo has said that this would be his last World Cup and he wouldn't play on the national team anymore. At the moment, there's no indication that he's going to change his mind. He just signed a rich extension with Juve. I think many Juve fans would just like for him to focus on the club. I think Verratti is definitely ready to be kind of the player that Pirlo has been for the Azzurri in recent years. So I think that's pretty good trade-off. I think really where the concern, though, is the defense for the Azzurri. I do think there's some pretty good options in the midfield and the attack, but you look on the defense, it's really pretty bare. I mean, Barzagli is probably the best Italy defender, but he's now, I think he turned 33 or he's 32 or 33, so this may be it for him on the World Cup level. Chiellini, I think, has taken, he's a little more fragile. I wouldn't say he's as strong as he's been in year past, but beyond that, there's really not too much else. There's a couple of young prospects. Romagnoli on Roma was a very impressive player. There's a player called Rugani who is co-owned by Juve and is coming up with Empoli. But I'd say really where I'm concerned is where are the great Italian defenders? Where's that going to come? Italy has always been built on great defenses, and I just don't see that right now. I think, a player that a lot of us are forgetting is El Shaarawy. I think because he was injured so much this season, I think he could be a fantastic player for the Azzurri. So I hope he's one of the players that whoever the coach may be now that Prandelli resigned builds around. I think that's one player with Verratti and Insigne that could really make a big difference for the Azzurri in the long run.
David, as we close it out, obviously I can't let you go without getting your thoughts on the controversial bite on Chiellini that Suarez applied. To me, I got to be honest, I'm disgusted, I'm appalled. I do not understand a guy of this class continuously, not once, not twice, but 3 or 4 times, continuously doing these stupid things. I said it to the 2 previous guests before you, David. If I were Chiellini, I would have just clocked them right there. End of story. Because this guy here is nothing more than a rat to do that. Lose the game, fair and square, not a problem. But to do that, that's where I think the other card should have came out. In fairness, that Marchisio deserved his, I believe. Suarez for sure deserved his.
Oh, well, there's no doubt about that. And, I think the Marchisio one, I could see it. I felt it was a little bit harsh, but, I could see it. I agree with you. The Suarez one, was a no-brainer. But I also do think Buffon spoke really well, as he usually does after the defeat. I mean, this World Cup for Italy was a total failure, and we can talk about the referee for sure, But Italy should have never put themselves in a position where episodes like what we saw today would cost them the match. So I try, to focus more on how the team can improve. Mistakes are going to happen with the referees, and Suarez, is making a career out of fighting people. But I think I'm with Buffon. I think, Italy needs to focus on what they did wrong. I thought they were way too passive. I thought against Costa Rica they had no plan B once they saw that Pirlo was being contained. I thought today they were just playing for the draw, and they seemed very satisfied with that. So I think Italy needs to look more on what they can learn from what happened. This is 2 World Cups in a row where they've really underachieved, weren't able to get out of the group stage. In the middle, they did very well in the Euro, and I felt in the Euro they were a more attacking style team than what we saw in Brazil. So I think that's really the takeaway that I have over what happened in the past few weeks.
David, great of you to take time out of your busy schedule to join us. Keep up the great work at gianlucadimarzio.com. You could read it in Italian and in English. And as I said this to you before, this guy really breaks a ton of stories. He's on top of the transfer market. And this guy here is one of the best in the world. You have an opportunity to work with him side by side. How great has that been?
It's been a great experience. What I really like about Gianluca is he's a terrific journalist. He never hypes stories for the sake of getting hits. But he's also a very nice, humble man. I think, there's no coincidence in what he does. It's all about the relationships and the context that he has to get information. And once you meet him or you kind of get a sense of what he's like, you totally get why he does it. So, yeah, it's been a great experience. He's a great maestro for me. I learn from him every day. So it's a pleasure, and I appreciate your kind words. And thanks again for having me on your show. Keep up the great work.
Appreciate it.